Snow whipped sideways across the highsierras as I pulled up to the homestead, a fortress of timber and steel battered by the storm. Something felt off before I even killed the engine. The front door jarred open, snow drifting inside. My heart tightened as I stepped in, trained instincts kicking in. The silence was heavier than the wind. There on the living room rug lay Grandpa Silas, frail and hypothermic. In moments like this, who would you trust with your life? Think about it. I dropped my pack and sank to my knees beside Grandpa Silas, every movement deliberate and every second stretching taut like a wire. His skin was pale, waxy, the shallow rasp of his breath barely registering in the heavy air. I checked his airway, my fingers, brushing his neck for a pulse that barely whispered beneath my touch. Years of wilderness, EMT training took over. There was no room for panic, only observation and action. His breathing was erratic, the kind that signals the body has started to surrender to the cold. I draped my heavy coat over his frail frame, layering blankets on top, feeling the chill seep through them as if mocking our efforts. Chemical heat packs became my allies. I activated them and tucked them at the key points. The axilla, the groin, targeting the arteries that could carry warmth where his body had forgotten how. Time was slipping. Hypothermia isn't gradual, it's a thief that steals function silently, slowing the heart, muddling the mind, and draining energy until there's nothing left to fight with. I couldn't let Silas reach that point. I knew the signs. His shivering had faded. That was bad. It meant his body had stopped trying to generate heat. I had to become the warmth his body could no longer make. Sliding down onto the couch behind him, I wrapped my arms around his frail frame, letting my body heat flow into his. Feeling the delicate bones beneath my hands, brittle yet stubborn, clinging to life, I whispered, soft but firm, "I've got you. You're not alone." Minutes passed like hours as I counted his breaths, timing the ragged inhales and exhales. I monitored for tremors, those small, violent spasms that tell you life is fighting to return. Slowly, agonizingly, a tremor ran through him, then another. He groaned a raw, rattling sound that was both terrifying and comforting. Shivering returned, racking spasms that were painful, but necessary evidence that the body had chosen to keep fighting. I sat up, keeping the blankets tucked tight, layering more heat packs as needed, adjusting, positioning, checking pulses and airways over and over my mind, a blend of instinct and knowledge. This wasn't just care, it was a race against the clock. A delicate dance with the cold that threatened to steal him from us. I felt a subtle shift, a small rise and fall of his chest, becoming steadier. The shallow, erratic gasps softened into a rhythm, a fragile but present sign of life. He groaned again, louder this time, as his body reclaimed the ability to shiver, to produce heat, to fight. Relief threaded through me, but it was tempered by awareness. The storm outside, the unfinished work, the deliberate sabotage that had brought us here. Yet in that moment, as he slowly stabilized, I allowed myself a breath of hope. We weren't out of danger, but Silas was alive, fighting, and the first step, the hardest, most urgent step, had been won. After making sure Silas was stable, my attention turned to the house itself. Something wasn't right beyond the storm's fury. I ran to the utility closet, eyes scanning for any clues, and immediately saw the breaker panel. The main switches weren't tripped, as they would be in a normal outage. No, they had been manually pulled. My stomach tightened. The wires to the generator transfer switch were cleanly cut. This wasn't a storm failure. This was deliberate sabotage. My hands trembled slightly as I processed the enormity of it. Someone had planned this, counting on the storm to cover their tracks. My gaze swept the rest of the house, searching for more signs, and I noticed the wall safe behind the old topographical map, its door swinging open. Inside, the contents were gone. $85,000 in cash and gold coins vanished. Silas kept his liquidity close away from banks for emergencies exactly like this, but someone had chosen to exploit that trust to prey on his vulnerability, to leave him at the mercy of the cold. Rage and disbelief collided in my chest. I moved through the guest room where Patricia and Kyle had been staying. The bed was made, the luggage gone. They hadn't fled the storm by necessity. They had fled to execute a plan. I pulled out my phone, the single bar of service barely hanging on. I opened Patricia's social media. The most recent post was from hours ago, a photograph of a snowy road taken from a warm car, accompanied by a caption, painting a story of concern and heartache. "Prayers for Silas," it read. "His dementia is getting worse. We're heartbroken we can't be there." I stared at the words. Dementia. Silas wasn't demented. He had been sharp, though forgetful. But Patricia had been crafting this narrative for months, convincing neighbors, doctors, anyone who would listen that Silas was slipping, isolating him, eroding his credibility. The storm wasn't their shield, it was their accomplice. They had cut the power, stolen the money, and left an 88-year-old man to freeze, counting on snow and wind to mask their crime. Anger simmered cold and steady, a different heat than fear or panic. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a calculated attempt at murder and theft. And they had made a critical mistake. They left me alive. I traced my steps back to Silas, glancing at the shattered alert system and the overturned wheelchair. Every detail clicked into place: the missing generator, the falsified social media, the careful staging of the storm. Patricia and Kyle had orchestrated this. Predicting the storm would give them plausible deniability, but they hadn't accounted for my presence, my training, my resolve. My hands clenched, but I kept my voice calm as I knelt beside him again. They had turned this into a test of control, a challenge I had no intention of losing. The realization settled over me. Cold but clear, this was no accident. This was a crime meticulously plotted, and it was now my responsibility to ensure justice was served. I held the phone in my hand, feeling the vibration as Patricia's name lit up the screen. Silas, wrapped in blankets and slowly warming, urged me to answer. His voice was steady, warm now, a stark contrast to the storm outside. I accepted the call. Riley, thank God, Patricia breathed, her voice tight with panic. "We've been trying to call for hours. Is the power out?" "How is Silas?" I let the silence stretch, letting her fill it with her own assumptions. "The power's out," I said flatly. "The generator didn't kick in." Her intake of breath was audible. "Oh no. We were afraid of that. We got stuck in Vegas. The airport closed because of the storm. We're frantic. How is Silas?" I let the quiet linger, the weight of the storm, the image of Silas shivering, filling her with imagined fear. "He's cold," I said simply. "Very cold." Patricia's panic rose edges of her voice, sharp-clipped. "Is he awake?" I remained silent. She filled the gaps, imagining the scene she had orchestrated, picturing Silas frozen, helpless, the perfect plan unraveling. Her voice trembled now. "You need to get out of there. It's not safe. The roads, you'll freeze." I shook my head, feeling the surge of control. "I can't leave," I said firmly. She tried again, her tone persuasive but desperate. "Someone will pick you up. Just leave." I lied smoothly, letting her think she'd won partial control, keeping my eyes on Silas. Then I noticed the small black box under his wheelchair, velcroed neatly to the metal frame. A blinking red light. Silas had been recording every conversation, every whispered plan, every careless boast for 6 months. I pulled it out. The digital recorder was a weapon, a key to the puzzle Patricia thought she had hidden. I played it aloud, letting the cold air carry her words and Vance's plotting. The audio was crisp, undeniable, the scheme to manipulate the storm, the stolen money, the planned accident, the lithium rights, the whole conspiracy laid bare. Patricia's carefully constructed narrative, her manipulation. Everything fell apart in that moment. My heart pounded, but my mind was clear. No longer a passive observer, I was fully in control. The storm outside and the chaos she had tried to orchestrate became tools I could wield. The power dynamic had shifted. I was no longer her victim or Silas's helpless protector. I was a vigilant guardian orchestrating the situation, exposing deceit, and ensuring Silas's safety. With radio in hand, I coordinated quietly, efficiently, letting the storm, her panic, and the evidence converge. Every word I spoke, every pause was deliberate. Patricia believed she still held influence, unaware that the game had flipped entirely. In that moment, fear, strategy, and revelation merged. I could feel it, the tide had turned, and for the first time, Silas and I were not surviving the storm. We were commanding it, standing watch over what was ours, ready to confront the consequences of their greed. The wind howled through the Sierras, snow lashing against the windows like a warning, and inside the homestead, Silas and I huddled over a rough map of the property, our breaths misted in the cold, but there was a clarity in the chaos. Every ravine, every narrow pass, every choke point on the access road mattered now. I moved methodically, unpacking chainsaws, flares, tow straps, and heavy-duty gear, explaining each move to Silas. He winced at the cold, still recovering from hypothermia, but his mind was razor-sharp, his decades reading the mountains invaluable. I outlined the plan aloud, layering instructions, visualizing the road from the attacker's perspective. Step 1, deny access. A single ponderosa pine stood at the narrowest stretch of the drive, a natural choke point. I'd cut it just so, creating a barricade they wouldn't expect. Silas nodded, approving the logic, pointing out terrain advantages I might have missed, marking safe zones and observation points from windows. Tripwires weren't just tools, they were psychological barriers. Subtle, yet effective, placed along the perimeter with irrigation hoses buried under fresh snow. They would trip alarms, alerting us to intruders, breaking the confidence of anyone who thought the storm had their back. Fuel lines stretched along the edge of the clearing, soaking the wood piles I had staged. Not enough to ignite a forest, but enough to create a wall of heat and light, a warning as well as a trap. We timed everything with the precision of an orchestrated dance. Silas, though frail, handled the radio's monitoring channels, noting wind direction and visibility. His eyes, once weary from illness and age, scanned the yard like a hawk. "They'll think the storm favors them," he said. Voice firm, but every step will be a guess, every movement uncertain. I layered blankets around equipment, adjusted flare placements, and rehearsed contingencies silently. The snow was thickening visibility, dropping to mere feet, yet our plan relied not on luck, but on knowledge, on the terrain itself, and on our ability to manipulate perception. Silas kept a careful record of our placements, advised when to conserve energy, and reminded me to rotate tasks, emphasizing patience and precision. I moved through the clearing, adjusting the choke point, measuring angles, imagining the approach of the intruders. Every branch I cut, every line I laid, every flare I positioned was a calculated step in anticipation of their arrogance. Together, despite the storm and our exhaustion, we transformed the homestead into a fortress of strategy, combining instinct training and intimate knowledge of the land. It wasn't just defense, it was control, a statement that we would not be outmaneuvered no matter the weather or the greed that drove them. Through the whiteout conditions, I saw the headlights first slicing through the blizzard like searching blades. Vance's massive black plow truck rumbled up the drive, the engine roaring metal crunching against the fallen ponderosa pine I'd strategically felled. Kyle, shivering in the passenger seat, brandished a rifle, their confidence masking their ignorance of what awaited. They were arrogant, thinking the storm was their shield, that the homestead was vulnerable, that I was just another obstacle. I crouched behind the snow berm, flare gun in hand, every muscle tense, every thought sharp. The diesel-soaked brush line I had laid waited silent and lethal in its psychological impact. When the truck shuddered against the tree, their momentum stopped and panic flickered in their eyes. They had underestimated both the terrain and the mind that commanded it. Vance's shouted voice, barely audible over the wind. "What the hell is this?" Kyle barked back, frustration mixing with fear. "Trees down, get the winch." "It's too big." I stayed hidden, silent, letting the confusion build. Their boots crunched through the snow, and I calculated distance angles, the path of fire, the timing for maximum effect. I fired the first flare. It soared into the fuel-soaked brush, erupting into a sudden, violent bloom of orange against the endless white. Steam hissed as snow melted instantly, forming walls of heat and light encircling them. Kyle dropped the rifle reflexively, surprise and fear overtaking any thought of resistance. Vance fell to his knees, shielding his face from the inferno, his arrogance stripped bare in an instant. I stepped from cover, flare gun trained voice, firm and unwavering. "Drop the weapon. Stay where you are." My eyes darted back to Silas through the window. He was safe, watching from his chair, alert and steady despite the ordeal. Radio in hand, I keyed the channel, contacting the sheriff. Static then, a clear, booming voice. "Copy that, Riley. I see the fire. We're coming up the service road on snowmobiles. Sit tight." Relief threaded through my tension, but my focus never wavered. Every movement, every flare was calculated. Vance and Kyle scrambled, trapped in the ring I had crafted, their panic palpable. Flames licked higher, light reflected off the snow, illuminating their wide-eyed terror. I fired another flare, not to harm, but to assert control, to reinforce the boundaries they had dared to challenge. They stumbled back, caught in the circle, realizing the storm was no longer their ally. Every instruction I gave over the radio, every movement I made was synchronized with the environment itself. The trees, the snow, the fire, the blizzard, as if nature itself obeyed my command. Silas, now fully engaged, monitored the monitors, noting every change, communicating shifts, his presence, a force multiplier in this tactical theater. Their arrogance had led them blindly into a trap, their confidence eroded by a combination of fear, miscalculation, and the calculated defenses we had put in place. The snowmobiles arrived, cutting through the blizzard lights, sweeping across the clearing. Sheriff Boyd and his deputies dismounted, weapons drawn but cautious, securing the perimeter. I guided them, coordinating their approach while maintaining flare coverage and ensuring Silas's safety remained uncompromised. Vance and Kyle, once so self-assured, now were reduced to cowering figures in a circle of my creation. The storm raged around us, wind shrieking, snow spiraling, yet inside that fiery circle, control had shifted irrevocably. We weren't reacting anymore. We were dictating the terms, using every tool, every ounce of knowledge, every calculated measure to assert dominance over a situation that had once threatened to overwhelm. The adrenaline, the strategic patience, the meticulous planning all converged in this moment. Silas's eyes met mine, a mix of pride and acknowledgement. We had turned chaos into advantage, fear into control, and in the heart of the blizzard, we stood unyielding guardians of the homestead, masters of the storm, ensuring no one would harm him or what was ours. The distant hum of engines cut through the storm, signaling Sheriff Boyd's arrival. Snowmobiles churned the drifts, headlights slicing through the blizzard. Boyd was the first off, massive and commanding, moving swiftly toward the chaos. 2 deputies followed, weapons drawn but pointed low, assessing the situation. I guided them, keeping the flare gun trained on Vance and Kyle as they froze in the center of the burning perimeter. Kyle dropped the rifle without hesitation, this time hands trembling, while Vance remained on his knees, disbelief etched into his face. The deputies moved in quickly, securing them in handcuffs, dragging them toward the sleds as I monitored the fire's shift and ensured Silas remained safe inside. Just as the immediate threat seemed neutralized, another engine approached Patricia, following the chaos, desperate to maintain her facade. She stumbled out of her luxury SUV fur coat, absurd against the inferno of snow, and fire eyes wide with panic. Her practiced composure crumbled as she saw Vance and Kyle restrained. I didn't answer her frantic questions. Instead, I pulled the digital voice recorder from my pocket and pressed play. The crisp, chilling audio carried over the storm, her plotting to leave Silas, to freeze discussions about the lithium rights, and the calculated plan to manipulate the scene for her gain. Her eyes widened, face draining of color as the reality of her conspiracy became undeniable. Words failed her. Silas, wrapped in a blanket, but standing tall now, spoke, voice steady and resolute. "It's over, Patricia." I watched calmly as her panic erupted into shrill screams, insults flung at us, at the world that had finally told her no. Boyd stepped forward, voice booming, reading her rights, and charging her with conspiracy, elder abuse, and fraud. She thrashed futile against the law and the evidence stacked against her. Watching her, escorted to the cruiser, the storm outside relentless, I felt a quiet vindication. Silas and I exchanged a glance, understanding that we had not only survived the night, but reclaimed control, ensured justice, and exposed the deception that had threatened to destroy us. The immediate danger had passed, the criminals apprehended, and the home and our integrity secured. The storm finally eased, leaving a sparkling layer of snow over the Sierras. Inside, Silas and I worked to repair the generator and seal the windows, reclaiming control of our home. Morning light crept over the ridges, warm and quiet, reflecting off the snow like diamonds. Sitting on the porch, wrapped in blankets, we shared a moment of peace. Family isn't just blood, it's who stands with you in the fire. Think about your own strength and the people you protect. And if this story moved, you consider supporting by liking or subscribing.